Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai, welcome to Inside Netball. Now we've had a wee break since the Netball World Cup last month, but we're back to discuss all things in the netball world at the moment and preview the upcoming Taini Jaimison Trophy series. Now this will be the first series since the very sad passing of Taini Jaimison herself. Taini Marimari Jaimison OBE was a legendary Silver Ferns coach and still remains our most successful. From 20 tests during her 4 years at the helm, Jaimison chalked up 18 wins for an impressive 90% success rate. She's a real stalwart of New Zealand netball, and we look forward to celebrating her with the upcoming series. Well, I've got Jenny Woods and Dean Wilson with me here today. Ladies, let's address the elephant in the room with the upcoming series. How are we feeling about it?
Well, there's a few elephants out there. I think there might be a herd of elephants that we need to talk about. But I've calmed down a little bit about this series.
Yeah, I feel like I've come to an equilibrium now.
But my word, I was mad at first when, like Netball New Zealand, I woke up that morning, saw that English team, and I sort of looked over it twice, and then I looked for the coach, and then, just nobody. And I think the thing that I couldn't get over was the lack of manners, actually. They, didn't even think to tell Netball New Zealand that this is what they were doing. They say they were always going to do it. Well, okay, but it's on the nose, I think. But look, okay, ticket sales are going well. We just need to embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, the lack of communication. I mean, that is frustrating. They would have seen each other at the World Cup only weeks ago. Why was there not a conversation had then? Look, hey, this is what we're planning for the upcoming series. This is England I'm talking about. Disappointing. And I think what's so disappointing is this is on top of what we saw against Jamaica last year. So it feels like a double whammy that we had an understrength Jamaican team last year, and now only how many months later we're seeing the same again. But like you, Jenny, I've picked up my lip. You got to look at we're putting our positive pants on.
Yeah, big girls' pants.
Big girls' pants. And look, it will be a great opportunity for these Ferns, particularly a couple of the newbies, Amelia Wormsley, one of them, they're going to have an opportunity up against a young and developing English side.
Yeah, so there it is. If you're playing catch-up, which I'm sure you're not if you're watching this show, England are sending a mostly developmental side. No one from the World Cup is coming for the Taini Jaimison series, but we've got 3 matches up against England coming your way. And we've got a former Silver Ferns coach, Yvonne Willering, to join us to talk about it. She's been involved in the Ferns camp leading up to the series. Kia ora, Yvonne. Thank you for joining us.
No, my pleasure. Finally some netball on the way again after the World Champs.
Before we get into the upcoming English series, let's just cross that off. Do you want to just download your thoughts on it all for us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was very disappointing getting the 4th placing, not obviously going on the podium. But I think the team now they have no choice. They have to leave it behind. You can say, we can redeem ourselves in this English series. No, you can't. For one thing, and it's already been indicated, England's bringing a second-rate team. I find it interesting. None of the players from the World Champs are coming. So, yeah, it's a bit of a training game right now, but the Silver Ferns have to look at it. It's an opportunity not to redeem themselves, but just to get it together. There were disappointing aspects that occurred from game to game and, leading from the quarterfinals onwards. And one of the things, obviously, was that through-court attack, getting into the shooters. And boy, did I hate that short play between goal attack and goal shooter. The good thing is, if Wormsley gets on, then you wouldn't have that, because obviously being tall, as it would have been with Grace Nowicki, they will be looking in to feed her differently. So, yeah, I thought that Ikanasio in particular, she's normally a very dominant shooter, but she was constrained because they played that interplay all the time, and I'm going, both of you and also Maya Wilson, they were better than that. They can do the up to go back. So I was disappointed with the in-circle, and I'm looking at seeing something different in this Taini Jaimison Trophy.
Mm-hmm. It looked to me, Yvonne, as though Amelia Ann Ikanasio was trying to be all things to all people. Once Weki went, it was almost as though it was all on her shoulders, and that really went against her game. What do you think?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And then also you had Maya Wilson there saying, taking over. Look, she didn't have to be a Grace Nowicki. She just had to be the best she could be in her own position. But yeah, I think that they had a different style of play in that, and I didn't understand that. And it went, from time to time. And yes, the umpire allowed so-called short pass, with that short interplay between shooters. But come January, that's going to change. Thank goodness, finally. But yeah, I don't think you saw Ikanasu at her best. Certainly defensively, she got some tips, but I've seen her play a lot better. And maybe the leadership that was put on her shoulders, it ended up taking over rather than just her general play. And again, I think she can just relax in this series leading into the Constellation Cup, because I think in part, and New Zealand they should use this Taini Jaimison series in preparation for the Constellation Cup against Australia. I would assume Australia is going to bring their best team, because don't forget it's a fourth. Yeah, but it's a fourth series. Now, 2 of those games are in Australia. Would they not come out with their best? Look, the Australian audience would have something really to say about that. So I'm expecting strong combination coming from Australia. Appreciate that they actually, I guess, have far more depth than most teams. I could not believe in the final of the World Champs. Look, they changed both their goal shooter and goal attack at half time. Like it went from Conan and Wood to Garvin and Austin, and it made no difference. In fact, Austin, I thought, was player of the game. So I'm going, whoa, they do have the depth. But I still would like to see the majority of that 12 coming to the Constellation Cup. And we have to do something about the fact that England hasn't brought their strong lineup. And I think some rules have to be put in place. And World Netball needs to make an example of this, because, you're right. We had it against Jamaica, not quite as bad. At least they're bringing 12 players. But, even management's not coming. The coach is not coming. Liana Leota, who was the technical advisor or something like that, now she's coming as the head coach. So, and to say they all were always going to have a rest, they must have known that before accepting this test series. So I look at it and I'm going, no, this isn't right. And something does have to be done.
I love your passion, Yvonne. It's so frustrating. I feel your frustration as well, because I feel the same. You've been in camp with the Silver Ferns. So what do we need to turn the focus of this tournament that's coming up, these 3 games? What is the focus for the Silver Ferns then, knowing that this is a technical, basically a development side that England have sent?
Yeah, and it's tricky, because the general public, kids and the general public, they just want to see the Silver Ferns in action, and that's great. But the netball public and the commentators and the media and everyone else, we're looking at it and we want the Silver Ferns to play with structure and, like open attacking play. And we've all spoken about that, and we want that. Defensively, if an intercept's taken, we want to be able to score from that and get rid of the unforced errors in our game. And this is an opportunity to do so. But having said that, we're also going to turn around, as the critics that we are, and we're going to say, and so we should be doing all this, because, again, it's a second-rate England side. But the Ferns should not take notice of that. They need to put out their strongest combination, and really it's just about, not starting afresh, but every player just playing to the best of their ability. We're not going to turn around and say, if only we had done this at the World Champs. That's been and gone. And so this is about really the players honouring certainly Taini Jaimison, but also the Silver Fern.
Do you think we'll see a difference in, you talk about structure and game plan? A lot of the kind of public perception was that our game plan at the World Cup looked either non-existent or not adaptable or not fluid enough. Has there been a focus on going back to a little more instinctive play, particularly on attack? And will we see more of that in the series?
Yeah, and you're right. And it's interesting because people say, did we have too much focus on Grace Nowicki? Appreciate she was tall timber in the back. And if everything failed in the midcourt, we always had the opportunity of putting the high ball into her. That was always an option that's going to be. And if we didn't have free players, just turn and throw it into Grace Nowicki.
The get out of jail free card. That's what I call it.
Absolutely. And we missed that. And then the mid-quarters, they had to play a different style. And they did. I mean, they played the ball around. I think they were guilty of playing the ball around too much. Yeah. I know it's one thing, retaining possession, absolutely, but we became hesitant, and there was opportunities in there, and we didn't utilise them. So that's something that certainly has to be changed around. And I think that in that second half, I think the draw against South Africa, and South Africa played really well. Let's keep that in perspective on that, but that draw. from there on, we were looking, going, what can we do? And I think that the Ferns needed to play differently on that. And again, you've already alluded to that, the mid-court. Now, it's going to be interesting. I think the mid-court will be slightly different leading into this series. But it's a totally different ball game, isn't it? You know, we're playing against players we don't know, really, we don't know a lot of. So this is an opportunity for the Ferns to totally focus on their own game and what they're trying to achieve. And we talk about the New Zealand style of play, both on attack and defence. Well, we need to go back to that. And yeah, I don't mind the holding shooter, but what I have problems with is where shooters go and they actually actively go towards the defender before moving off. Now, that's 50-50 ball. And why would you do that when you don't need to? Like I said, the up to go back, what happened to the quick dodge we used to do? Amelia Ignacio is so good at that drive through the baseline, but they stopped doing that. They will look at that and they will now hopefully turn and go back to doing what they know they can do.
I feel like Yvonne's in my brain.
Sound like Annie and Adine that day.
Yes.
I was just going to throw in a word of caution here because a few people on the social media have suggested to me that, you know, I should get down off my high horse and this is not a, you know, yes, this might not be the best team, but this is not a bad English side. I mean, they've got Sophie Drakeford-Lewis is no slug, Sasha Glasgow, who some of us have watched in the, you know, the Suncorp, good player. I guess we shouldn't just assume that we're going to, you know,
walk over them,
run roughshod over them.
I'm with you on that, but it's scary stuff. Like, we have to win these and we have to win them well for the reputation of the Silver Fern, because how often has it been stated this is a second-rate England side?
Yep.
Look, there's a lot of players, players from the World Champs that are missing. Those were the best players England had. So let's keep this in perspective on that. So, yeah, we need to win. But really, we need to win well. And what I mean by that is that, you know, we have to put structures in place, and you as commentators need to be able to say, oh, look at this structure, look at this, you know, and actually go with that. Defensively, I thought that at times, yep, we did like the box defense, we did diamond defense, and we capitalized on that. But now, if we capitalize on it, it's got to be converted into goals. And the other thing that needs to go, obviously, is one, the unforced errors, but also the penalty count. Need to adjust. It's all very well saying, oh, the opposition's very physical and rough. Listen, there are times, you have a look at it from the quarters on, there were times when New Zealand was very heavily penalised and kept doing what they were doing. So this is an opportunity for the team just to come out and really, well, in a way, regroup. And certainly, like Nolene has indicated, it's about being revitalised. And in a way, I won't say starting again, because the bulk of our players are the same as was at the World Champs. So, yeah, there's an opportunity, though, for a couple of youngsters. Interesting Consolation Cup. I know we're talking Taini Jaimison, but there we've got 14 players. So, again, is an opportunity for different players. But I think you will see different combinations going out on court. I hope so. You know, even defensively, I'd like to see Jane Watson get more court time. I was surprised she didn't get more court time. I actually assumed she was injured when actually I don't think she was.
Yeah, no, we've heard that she wasn't. She was available. So, because you have been inside my head, I would like to get your thoughts on this one too. Shooting.
Yep.
Do we go, and should we in this English series be looking at that post earlier? Are we protecting our percentages, or should we be putting it up, backing ourselves? And does it matter if our percentage drops a little bit, if it means at least we've gone for the shot as opposed to throwing the ball in and out? Because I was getting very frustrated by the opportunities we give defence every time that ball gets in the circle and goes back out again. Is that been spoken about in camp?
Jesus, now you're in my head.
Right.
Yeah, and there were times, and a shooter, whether it's goal attack or goal shooter, they would ask for the ball in the circle. Okay, now the feeders, the wing attack centre, they gave the ball up, but they knew that the ball was going to come out again. And I'm going, why did you even ask for the ball? Because it was only going to come out again. Totally with you. Even sometimes when it goes back to the transverse line, every time the ball's in flight, it's an opportunity defensively. And I'm with you. I mean, especially Amelia Ignacio, she's a long-range shooter. We know that. That's why she's in the team, because if she's shooting well, it means the defence have to go one-on-one, and I think that's vital. But at the moment, you have a look at it, because they are so close together, both defenders of the opposition are able to also go close together and work together in combination. So, yeah, and that's a common thing. It's a common rule. As soon as a shooter gets the ball in the circle, at least turn to the post. Thereby, the defender at least has to go back 0.9 of a metre. Then, if you're not confident, you can then pass and cut. But the way we do it, we take the ball, we stay stationary, which means the defender can stay behind, and then we pass it out. So I'm totally with you. That's their role. That's why they've got shooter on their bib. Turn to the post first.
Here's one for you though, Yvonne.
Oh.
What is Nolene going to do?
Oh, yes.
With her future, with her career? Is she going to go again?
It's a hard one, okay? And you may say, oh, she's dodging. No, she's not. I don't think she is. I think she's waiting. She's putting all her energies at the moment into the Taini Jaimison and the Consolation Cup. There is no rush for her. I think that certainly Netball New Zealand will have a thought as to who will take over if she doesn't want the job again. So there is no rush for that. And I totally respect the fact that she just wants to focus on these two series. I think at this stage, she wants to make sure she still has the passion and the desire to do so. And she's indicated that, yes, she's come back fresh, which is great. Don't forget, this also hurt her. It's not just about the team out on court. This really got to her as well. So she's had the break. She's coming in a way fresh, refreshed to do this. That what you don't want is just a continuation of what has been, because then you'll always get what you've always got, sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't think she's holding back at the moment. I think certainly it's in her mind, but I think she really wants to just focus on these two competitions and then decide. Don't forget, there's also a review going on at the moment. And yes, she will take notice of that. She'll still get the job, I think, whatever the review comes out with. But she will look at that review and say, okay, well, this and this and this, And she's always indicated that she's a caretaker. So it's not that it's her job of right. And I respect her for that.
So there's another 4 years in her? Because, I mean, ideally we want this next coach to be, there for the entire cycle.
Yeah, I would not offer a 4-year contract. I'd offer a 2-year contract. I think 4 years is too far ahead. And within 2 years, then she would know, and you can always then, I don't actually like an assistant coach becoming the head coach, but you can certainly have other plans in place leading up to it. So, no, I'd offer her a 2-year contract with the right of renewal in that situation. But right of renewal always means it's subject to whatever's happened out on court, really.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Yvonne. Like Jean said, we love your passion, and you're right. We're just going, yep, sitting here, yep, we agree.
But there was a lot of nodding.
A lot of nodding. Yes. Yeah, I've got a sore neck already. But I hope you enjoy the upcoming trophy series. And once again, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, pleasure.
She's great. Great to hear from her. Let's talk about this coaching situation. As Yvonne mentioned, maybe just 2 years, a 2-year contract offered to Nolene. How do we feel about that? I'm a big believer if you want the 4 years, you really want to just have that great build up into the World Cup. 2 years, it kind of leaves you just before Com Games and Netball World Cup, Jen.
Well, yes, but then we don't even know if we've got Commonwealth Games, do we? I mean, at the moment it's off. Victoria pulled the plug. I think they'd made it far too expensive for their own good. But what happens next? And the other thing that worries me about Com Games is what other sports are going to be added to those Com Games. There's no guarantee that netball will be there, is there?
Oh, there's no guarantee, but usually the countries who host it would want netball there.
But what if they go to
a Commonwealth Games? I mean,
a strange country.
It's a Commonwealth sport, right?
Netball is the glamour event at the Commonwealth Games.
It is.
So, surely.
And we need the Commonwealth Games because that's our two pinnacle events, World Cup, Commonwealth Games. Or they're going to have to think of something different because we need that focus. We need another focus other than just World Cup. But the other thing I thought that was really interesting that ties into the Nolene staying on, timing of it, is the review. We know that this review is being taken place at the moment. But the review, the key to that is people being honest and people giving feedback.
And you're talking about players.
And we're talking about players. Yeah. We're talking about the wider, but particularly players. And it is tough. You know, these people you live out of a suitcase with, and to give feedback and critical feedback is not always easy. So it's going to be interesting, but I do agree with Yvonne. I think unless something drastic came out of that review, I imagine if Nolene put her hand back up, I reckon New Zealand's given her the job again.
Well, that's what Yvonne pretty much said, didn't she?
Yeah.
The job would be hers. When is this review coming out? Do we know?
I don't think any of us
It can't be too far away. I mean, I think
yeah.
it's sort of, well in hand.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, if we look at the Silver Fern side for this Taini Jaimison trophy, I know Yvonne talked about the mid-court, and I wanted to talk to you guys about the mid-court because I was like, oh yes, it is. It is going to be a different mid-court. Whitney Souness, Kate Heffernan, Maddie Gordon and Mila Buchanan. That's an incredibly young centre court we've got there. What are you expecting from them, Nadine?
Well, I'm hoping that we don't have 50 passes to go. So that's what I don't want to start with. But look, it is young, exciting. Who's going to play wing attack? You know, obviously Gina's unavailable. So I don't know, but for me, it's not just the mid-court, it's that connection to that shooting circle. And that's where that focus needs to be, getting that ball down, taking a few risks. And I love your point, Storm, about playing with a bit of instinct. And I think those players there, Mila, instinct. Whitney Souness, instinct. So getting some of that back, because structure's great, but structure's what you build from. You don't always have to stick exactly to, you know, actually the coaches might not entirely agree with me, but that gives you the base of which you've got to play, you've got to read it, you've got to have instinct. And I do think that combination of players, those two in particular, Mila and Whitney, they've got instinct within them.
But that is only one different player in the mid-court, isn't it?
It is only one.
It's only one
which
different player.
True, which is weird to think about. But we've seen Shannon Saunders thrown back into the mix, and I guess that's another sort of steady, experienced hand. And I'm looking at this mid-court, and I just feel like they're so young.
Well, exactly. But I mean, the thing when I looked at this New Zealand team, I thought, oh, it's pretty much the same. There's only there's two not there.
Amelia and Mila.
Yeah. That's right. So they've come in for what? TP, Sylvia Rickett and Gina. And I just think, so what is Nolene Taurua going to do? Is she going to throw it all up and mix it all about, which I suspect she might, just to sort of try and get, well, you want a different outcome, won't you? But also, you know, I just hope that we really do win and win well against this England side. Because I think we have to really make a statement, because if we just stagger past them, I don't think that says much. And, you know, it's part of me, I just really want to, well, I don't want to teach the English a lesson, but part of me does want to teach the English a lesson, you know. You don't muck around with us.
Oh, she's getting the finger out.
The finger is out. Well, on that note, and again, Yvonne mentioned it, do you think Amelia Walmsley will be our starting goal shoot?
Ooh.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
You would?
Wouldn't you try her?
You know, is the game plan in this new sort of Ferns outlook going to be based around a Walmsley shooting circle? Walmsley,
well, why pick her if you're not going to play her?
She will play.
I'm not asking if she'll play though. You know, it was very much Maya Wilson and Amelia Ran at the World Cup. Do you think we'll see Amelia Walmsley?
Do you think that's because that's the kind of plan we want to play with Grace? So you're like,
yes.
So do you work on that? I don't know. I think she'll get some decent time though. I don't know if she'll start, because you want her to come on with confidence too. So it might be a little bit around her personality. You know, some players want to start, they're quite confident starting when they're new, and others like to actually sit back, take in the game and then be introduced. So I think that will be the balance of knowing what her personality's like. But I'm excited about Amelia. I mean, she's got a lot to offer. She's very athletic goal shooter. She can jump. She's young. So I think we'll see a lot of her in the series. Well, I hope we do.
I will be interested to see, I'll be looking at the England coaching combination. Mm-hmm. So you've got Liana Leota, our own Liana Leota, fantastic. Sam Bird, who I only know by repute, who, you know, head of the London Pulse, great reputation. And of course, Joe Harton, who's coming over from Giants country. So, you know, that's an interesting dynamic.
That's young too. Or is that just because I've got old and I feel like that's young?
No, that's young. Yeah. Young and inexperienced. Liana Leota, leading her first head coach international campaign. Speaking of coaches and legendary coaches, we've had mentioned a couple on the show already. I feel like it's only fitting that we finish with mentioning and acknowledging Robbie Broughton, who sadly passed away earlier this month. I mean, Nadine, you were coached by her for so many years. Where do we even begin trying to touch on the legacy she's left behind?
It is so hard. Look, she was just phenomenal, and I feel like she was that coach that brought in that holistic view that we now see and that we now speak so highly of in Dame Knowles. And she was just phenomenal, not just with what she achieved with her professional or semi-professional athletes, but I think one of the pieces she was always exceptionally proud of was what she achieved with Broughton College, the school team. She didn't buy in a school team. She was successful. I think the stat the other day was she took them to 9 secondary school tournaments in a row. And this is a school of 200 kids, winning 2 of them, I think it was, at secondary school. That shows to me the calibre of the coach, who she could pull together and not only achieve with the sting or the steel, but also with that young, the youth, the school age.
Yeah, she was the most successful domestic coach in New Zealand history, winning 7 titles. A fitting tribute will be planned for her when the Silver Ferns play Australia in Invercargill in the Constellation Cup. That's on the 19th of October, so we're very much looking forward to that. That is all we have time for here today on Inside Netball. Thank you again, Adine and Jenny, for joining me. Riveting chat as always. We're very much looking forward to the Taini Jaimison series kicking off this weekend on Sunday. You'll catch it all live on Sky Sport.